Well, welcome back to the Pastors Podcast. Pastor Scott here with Pastors Brian and Matt.
Hello.
Hey.
I didn't look back, but it's been a while since the three of us have gotten to do this.
Every time you say that, and then I sing Stained, it's been a while, and then people stop listening. That's
Is
it.
that every time?
I think it's every
Actually,
time. Maybe it just happened once.
As I was saying it, I was like, I feel like this is now, it's a little bit cliche. It felt cliche coming out of my mouth.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
feel like I need to apologize for it.
No, well, that's not the direction.
The point is, we're backed by popular demand.
That's
Popular
right.
demand.
And now here we are.
You
That's
can't
right.
give, when people really want something, you can't give it to them all the time. You can't eat candy for every meal, you know?
This is true.
This is the candy of the podcast world.
And not just the pastoral like of the podcast world.
Of the podcast world.
Yeah. Joe Rogan and whoever else. What are like the top podcasts in the world?
The ones that we're on the same level with there?
Yeah. Like the top of the podcast world. Well, how would you describe that? I don't even know.
Yeah,
they're
I
probably
don't
true.
really-
They're probably true crime podcasts.
True. That's
True
hard to
crime.
say, huh?
True crime podcasts.
True crime podcasts.
Is that the top of the podcast world?
Probably. What is it, Brian? Do you know?
I have no idea.
We got to be close, though.
Yeah. We got to be right there.
Nipping at the heels.
I'm just glad it was candy and not like you made us something enjoyable but not nutritious. Like you really
Yeah.
you didn't go like filet mignon or anything. It really is just like
candy.
Oh,
like
filet mignon.
really.
Filet mignon's kind of nutritious.
I would say Jim Leonard probably would prefer to be the candy because he loves candy and he loves sweets.
Yes,
So
he does.
Listening to the Cornerstone History podcast is like drinking a smoothie or a milkshake, a banana milkshake with Jim Leonard.
For 3 meals in the same day.
Meals in the same day.
A joke no one gets.
No, they get it. They get
know-
it because
they know
we keep
Jim's
making the same
milkshake. Oh,
joke.
that's
Yeah.
fair.
And actually, when
Jim lives off milkshakes.
when we,
This is-
I know he's not going to listen to this. So when we have his celebration next year, the 50 years and 100 years of the building of the sanctuary, 50 years of Jim Leonard at Cornerstone, it's just everyone gets milkshakes.
everybody gets milkshakes.
That's it.
Yeah.
What kind of food should we get?
Is this
Milkshakes?
better than him singing Stained? Or is this worse?
Oh, sorry, Brian. Wow.
I was
just
just
curious.
picturing
Really
I was
messed up.
just picturing us ordering the In-N-Out truck and having it come out and be like, no, we just want you to serve milkshakes.
Just milkshakes. No cheeseburgers, please.
No. How much would it cost if you just served milkshakes? And the disappointment in every kid's eye that goes running up to the truck and be like, no, we just have milkshakes.
Yeah.
There's a 40% shot that Jim goes up to the truck and asks if they can put M&Ms in it.
He might be carrying his own bag of M&Ms and offered it. Could you put these in it for me, please?
The sound of Jim Leonard. A Ziploc baggie full of M&Ms. Anyways, what's up?
Those have been enjoyable. The Cornerstone History, listening to Jim. I know we've talked about this before.
Oh, yeah.
Or it's so fun to listen to him tell a story.
I don't think you can get too much of that.
So in this episode, though, we're not doing Cornerstone History. We're going to talk about sabbaticals. I'm about to leave on a 3-month pastoral sabbatical.
What?
I know.
Okay.
We're announcing it now, or we will have announced it at the.
You announced it at the family meeting.
I did kind of announce it. I mean,
Offhandedly.
yeah. Most people. I mean, the people like around.
Yeah.
Most people know, but maybe not most people. I don't know. A lot of people know.
It would be fun to see who knows at this moment. Like, we don't have that information, but it'd be interesting to see who knows and
do
who
a Twitter
doesn't
poll?
know. No. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to know, but like if you could like snap your fingers and look at like the dissemination of information, I'd be very interested in that. We should get Jonathan Cow to work on that.
Can Realm do that?
No, but Planning Center can.
Doubtful.
So we're just filled with inside
Yeah.
church organizational jokes this morning.
Yeah.
So we've done this before. We just remembered before your sabbatical, but I feel like it's a good opportunity to talk about why we do sabbaticals and to lead in, but particularly not even necessarily just to explain it or justify it, but to invite you as a church family into this process with us. I think in a lot of ways, a pastoral sabbatical is a gift and something that comes with the support of the church family. And so we want this to kind of be a family thing, not just a staff or pastoral, decision as well. So we want to invite you into a bit of a, but I think for those that maybe are new, the concept of sabbaticals might be new. And so I thought it might be helpful just to start with why we do what pastoral sabbaticals are and why we do them.
A lot of places, at least a lot of churches, tend to think about sabbaticals as like solutions to burnout. I think sometimes, where it's like, the pastors kind of run themselves ragged, or typically in that situation, like the pastor runs himself ragged. And then, once he's kind of really close to burning out or has burnt out, like give him a sabbatical, give him like some months to kind of, get rested, and then come back and kind of do it all again. And that's not what these are here. I think that's just kind of helpful. Some people think of them that way. Other people think of like there are other industries that have sabbaticals, like the academic world can do sabbaticals that are really about production. Here's how you go away to go write something or publish papers or whatever that is. So it's just kind of a different form of work. Like it's not that either. What we've tried to do here is make it so that the pastoral, like the staff pastors who have a kind of unique job, also are cared for in a unique way that corresponds to the uniqueness of the job, which comes with not waiting for us to get burnt out, and ideally not like having us structure our lives so that we ever would, but giving, about every 5 years, I think is what we've done now, give or take, plus or minus. COVID kind of threw a big wrench in those plans.
Yeah, this is 6th year or 7th year for you, right, Scott?
Yeah, it's 7 or 8. So in
something like that, right?
7 or 8. Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
But generally in the 5-ish years.
Yeah.
It's a time to go rest, but not just do nothing rest. It's a time to like go refresh yourself, to make sure that your family is well cared for during that time. And we try and uniquely tailor them around each individual and where you are in that place in life. So for me, I had 5 very young kids for my second sabbatical, and the uniqueness of my family situation informed how you guys helped guide me for what was supposed to happen during that sabbatical.
Yeah.
So I was able to come back, a bigger blessing to the church ideally, but also just well cared for. I think that's what we're trying to do, for you now. We've done it for, I think, every staff pastor at this point except for Ara, right? Did we do? No. We kind of did one sort of for Ara, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think to me, the rhythm of rest in the life of a Christian is a command and absolutely necessary for our souls. Like that's necessary in the daily life, like you're saying, Brian, and sort of the structure of your daily life. And it's necessary in periodic ways in more extended times. And so I think in a world, and I'm gonna earn some brownie points with my wife here right now. I think in a world that is very fixated on productivity, the command to rest and to Sabbath as Christians is countercultural in a way that displays faith and trust in God. And that's why we do it. We do this as a rhythm. It's not, commanded to take 3 months off as a pastor or anything like that. Every 5 years, there's no like specific timeline. But the principle, I think, is so important for us as a group of Christians in West LA seeking to honor the Lord in our lives, and I think it's extremely important for us as pastors as well.
It actually makes me think of Acts 6, like when the apostles were teaching, and they put in place some practical structures in getting some people to wait tables and handle some logistics so that they could be singularly devoted to the study of the word and to prayer. And in a lot of ways, in a world that is obsessed with productivity, there's just no way for us not to be influenced by that, right? And to be shaped by that. And there's a way in which this is again, it's not just rest, like it's not just do nothing rest, right? It's not just a ceasing, but it's a dedication. It's a unique dedication to that time with the Lord and to prayer, to time in His Word, that is meant to also both shape the unique responsibility we have as pastors to care for souls.
So you're not just going to watch Netflix for 3 months, is what you're saying?
That's not currently my plan. No.
But I think it's a really fascinating point, because even the definition of rest is so different for the world compared to the definition that God gives us in Scripture. Sort of the picture of rest in Scripture is far greater, maybe even far more active than what we oftentimes think of as rest. Rest is actively yielding yourself and enjoying yourself in the Lord and resting in His peace and His love and His grace and His goodness towards you. It's a spiritual, it involves a spiritual kind of activity, of purposefully putting yourself under the love and care of God in a unique way, and not ceasing of all activity. So it's such a fascinating thing to think about. It's actually maybe even similar to meditation, the way that the world's definition of meditation is to empty your mind, but the God's definition is to fill your mind with His word. I think the same is true for rest, where the world's definition is cease from doing all things and just participate in passive entertainment. God's definition of rest is far greater and more holistic than that, and it feeds our souls in a way that I think we all absolutely need.
Yeah.
Brian, you've taught on that before. I remember that. Everything I just said was from you. Stolen.
What? So
your original thoughts.
I'd love for you guys to even just reflect back on what on just some fruit that you've seen from sabbaticals in the past, from your sabbaticals, from the times that we've done this previously, that each of us have done this previously.
What was yours like? How long ago was that?
Has to have been at least 5 years now.
I feel like that, right?
Something like that. No, probably 4.
4 years.
Probably 4. I think what it allowed me to have was extended time with the Lord in a unique way. So extended time in reading, prayer, extended time with people, like life-giving relationships, not ministry in a formal sense, but just life-giving relationships, friendships, a lot of processing, thinking through. I think it was a season for me where there was a lot of reflection on, at that point, my mom had just passed away a little bit before that. And so just kind of reflecting on family and reflecting on life and kind of bigger picture stuff and God's sort of calling, but also kind of looking forward to the future of, where am I, who am I in the Lord, and how does that form me in the space that I inhabit? So I think a lot of it was just a lot of processing, thinking, a lot of great time, getting back into some rhythms that sometimes get disrupted and interrupted in the midst of the busyness of life, reestablishing and resetting up some of those rhythms of just focusing on the Lord and focusing on connection with both God and with other people and processing.
Yeah, mine was pretty similar. I mean, they are each tailored to kind of our unique needs in the moment, both as individuals and also kind of where our families are at, and even to some degree what's going on at the church and how that has, led to certain questions or developments or whatever in our own lives and thoughts and hearts. My last one was very focused on family and like, here's how to kind of get things in a sense organized. That feels like really too superficial or too kind of dry, but how can, in the midst of a life of ministry, and then the family growing in the unique way that it did, so many things were just kind of, it's like a garage, you just keep piling things in, and like it just needed to get sorted, and that wasn't going to happen well, and it was going to not be as kind of fruitful if it didn't happen in that context. But along with that was also kind of a seasonal break for me. Like there was a way of, at that point, we were, as far as we know, kind of done adopting, done with more children. And there was kind of a way of like looking backwards and going, okay, we're changing seasons here. And that affects all sorts of things, from family to work, to my own relationship with God, and kind of just the way life unfolds. Having a chance to take a step back and look at that is a privilege that not everyone gets, but also seems to uniquely fit the vocation we have of a kind of holistic engagement in the church and life as a pastor.
Well, I was just going to ask you, Scott, what was your experience like the first time you had a sabbatical?
Yeah, so I was actually just looking at, so it was 8 years. It was 2015. And one of the unique things about that, it was the first sabbatical we did, but it was a little bit less proactive and a little bit more reactive to some potential burnout at that point.
That's when Matt invented sabbaticals.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I'm looking at my calendar. We had a sabbatical meeting in early June, and my sabbatical started June 25th.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, it was like
typical planning for that time of the
well,
life
that's
of
true.
the church.
The life of the church, we were, yeah. So, in one sense, this is a very different experience, having it so planned so far in advance. But honestly, when I look back, I mean, it was 8 years ago, and there are still daily routines that are a part of my life that were developed and nurtured during that season. And things that I've passed on to countless people, and things that there are still places that I will, like, when things get overwhelming or I'm just like disconnected from the Lord, there are still places like in LA that I will go like now that I discovered or experienced the Lord there the first time 8 years ago during that season. Still a refreshment I draw from. And so in that sense, it was, and so that was 2015. So it was 10 years after we planted the church. So we'd planted the church, we'd merged the church. It was a few years later. And after having been like I just felt like I was sprinting for a decade. All of my kids were born in those years. It reminded me of a lot of the gospel truth that I'd been like standing on, but kind of in one sense fading in the background as you know, you just try to keep up with life. And so it was actually a really rich time. I don't remember all the components of it, but what sticks with me is so many of the rhythms that have shaped the last 8 years of my life.
Can you share, like, I mean, even on the practical level, are there, you said some things that are still with you today. Like, do you have an example of something like that?
Yeah. I mean, part of it is just the regular, like a regular Bible reading plan that, has, and not that I didn't have that before, but there was there was a richness and discipline to it that I developed there. There's a type of prayer that was slower, more meditative, not just trying to get across the truths, but just an ability to be with God. Honestly, there's two spots. One is there's two like physical places. Like one is at the end of the Bayona Creek bike path. There's like a rock jetty out there. The other is
Minchie's.
No, that's right. The other is actually
and Minchie's, man.
The other is actually the Manhattan Beach Pier. That I can just go, like I would go and I would sit at for hours with the Lord as I wrestled through the nervous energy that just couldn't get over the fact that I felt like I needed to be doing something. And the comfort that came in the gospel in those places, it is an interesting way in which, I mean, this is why place, being embodied, we've talked about this before, but just place is such a powerful reality and dynamic. And I can still sit in those places and it's accessible in a way, and not, you know, in a magical, like everything, all the problems go away kind of way, but like the reminder of who God is accessible in some really rich ways. And I think that's it's interesting. I think that coming out of that, also some of the focuses and trajectories of ministry and life in the church have been shaped by that. There's disciplines in my relationship with Laura that we developed during that season that have shaped the last 8 years. And I think that I talk about that in those particular relationships because they like, well, gosh, like that's nice for you to have. But as a pastor, those things have shaped not only like my ability to do ministry, but how I engage with it, what I have, what we have to offer, where we are pointing people, not and what we have to offer, not necessarily in a tangible, like the content I have to offer, but it nurtures the steadiness of soul.
How do you, so one thing this is an unplanned question.
That's fine.
But just to throw you off a little bit, but how do you think through this? You're about to head into sabbatical, 3-month sabbatical. How do you think through this when a lot of the people who are listening don't have the privilege of taking 3 months off for a spiritual refresh? And how do we, I guess this is just sort of a question of pastoral ministry versus people in the church, like living out life and the pressures of their jobs. Like, how do you think about that? And this is a privilege, right? This is like a unique privilege that as a church, like first of all, we say thank you to you as a church for allowing this, encouraging this, supporting us as we do this because it's needed. But like, how do you think through this in the context where a lot of people are listening and don't have this privilege? Yeah. Maybe that's
I mean,
controversial.
There are layers there.
No.
I think it's a good question, and it's been in my head kind of this entire podcast. There's different ways to answer that. Like on the one hand, it would be pretty great if life was structured in West Los Angeles such that most people or everyone got a 3-month sabbatical every 5 years. Like that there's a way that's just a net good. Like everyone can use extended time to reflect and step back, and it's not ideal that everyone doesn't have that. So there's a way where it's like, oh, that would be really great. So it's not like we're looking at it going, well, it's only for people who are pastors that really need this. No, I can see how someone listening is like, man, that sounds amazing. What would my life be like if I could step away and step back with that kind of length? But I get 2 weeks, I get 1 week, I get whatever. So on the one hand, it's like, yeah, that we note the privilege of this, and we recognize that you probably would benefit from something like this too, even though you don't have opportunities for it. And so we're like sitting here recognizing the blessing that we have. Simultaneously, though, there is a way that I think what Scott just finished saying was there are certain kind of vocations that lend themselves more to something like this than others. It doesn't mean that we're special, so we get it. It just means that this kind of sabbatical kind of concept does conform to the kind of job that we do in a somewhat unique way. And other vocations do something similar here and there. But I think for us, like Scott said, like when we go and come back, we're not just going and coming back better rested so we can have more energy doing the same things we've always been doing. There's a way that the life and the shape of the church is shaped by these times where we step away and get ourselves centered, and get ourselves moving forward with God in certain ways, where it's not just rest so you can work harder, but it's also not just like, well, take some time off so you can kind of get your life sorted and come back, and now you're better at your job because your life is sorted. It really is step away because the function of your life as a pastor is to apply your whole life to not just yourself, your family, but to the whole church. And so there are ways that, there's boundaries and stuff in there. It was all these things we could talk about. But at the end of the day, the way that the church is ministered to by us is determined by the shape of our life in really profound ways based on what we do as pastors. And so to have that time away to situate, to reconnect in certain ways, and to advance our own relationship with God and our own kind of sense of calling and direction and all sorts of other things that go along with sabbaticals allow us to step back in and then be a better blessing to people than we would have otherwise in a way that is just kind of inflected through the fact that we are pastors.
Yeah. No, I think I'd exactly echo that. I think, and in a lot of places, I think a lot of healthy companies
Yeah.
see the need for something like this. I mean, it's like sabbatical, paternity leave, which again is different, but is in it sees as like for the sake of longevity in any where there's benefit to that in our like hyper productivity geared world. At the same time, I think that the uniqueness of the pastoral vocation isn't something we talk about a lot. We do talk a lot about like, yeah, we've got a job, you've got a job. We're all trying to, live life and follow Jesus here in West LA. And in one sense, that's true. But I think there's a place for us to not shy away from, I think, like you said, the uniqueness of the pastoral call, and particularly the vocational pastoral call, where this isn't our career. Like this isn't, I mean, in one sense it is, but like this is a calling, a life calling that the church has freed us up so that we can devote our lives to this. And the impact and implications and needs for that are unique in not better, worse, but they're unique in the life of the church. And I think in that context, we put sabbaticals not simply as like rest or like time off, but about nurturing that which is at the core of our vocation and calling, in our relationship with God and our the richness of His Word and the nurturing of our souls.
Yeah, as a way the sabbatical in some unique way is it's kind of part of our job in a weird way. That's not necessarily true of other vocations like that. Even while we're not on sabbatical, there are things that we do that like we sometimes will pray and read our Bible at work. Like, that's not most people can't do that. That's in a sense a privilege.
Yeah.
It's also like woven into what it means to do our job well.
Yeah.
And so like they're just kind of these weird things that are somewhat unique. We don't typically play into that because so many people can make in different places pastors seem like these super special people who are on kind of a higher spiritual plane. And so we kind of want to fight against that idea because that's not what's happening. But sometimes it can lead to not acknowledging that there are some unique things about our lives and not just the demands on them, but just the shape of what we do that have these corresponding things that go with them.
I mean, in one sense, the analogy is imperfect because I think any analogy is imperfect, but it's like this, it's professional development, not vacation. And now again, professional development looks different when the vocation is a pastoral and spiritual one, right? It's not about like producing something or whatever, but it's but I think it's helpful to think about it.
Well, and it also allows us, not doesn't allow us, it's also having a sabbatical is the kind of thing that one, we'd give up. Like at some level, we can, so it seems appropriate, but it's not something that we like insist on.
Yeah.
Like this has to be a part of everything we do.
That's why when 5 years came up and 2020 hit, I didn't just take a sabbatical.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We just kind of both like, we're just going to push this one.
Yeah.
So it's not, we can. And in that sense, speaking less about the uniqueness of the pastoral vocation, but to people who don't have that ability in their own jobs in a busy world in West LA, where the life is structured in such a way that you feel like you could use a breath of air and can't get it. Like, so for those of you listening who are in that position, and I think there's a lot of you, I think that part of what we're trying to do with the sabbaticals is with the maneuverability we have to create a personal and corporate kind of culture of rest for the sake of the church, which is its own kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think my kind of counsel is, we have maneuverability there that not everyone has. And it's also uniquely tailored to the kind of job we do. That's not everyone's job. But for anyone listening, whatever maneuverability you do have, I think the idea of pursuing a somewhat countercultural idea of rest in your life is powerful. It doesn't need to be 3 months. It doesn't need to look like ours. Your life is different than ours, and there's some ways it's the same. So, that's not the point. The point is, I think there are ways that saying, I am going to take time off that I have been given the opportunity to do, whether that's every week or vacation time or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in so doing, it is a kind of spiritual discipline, to borrow a phrase, that allows me to recognize that it is God who gives the growth, not me.
Yeah.
That it is God who sustains, not my effort or productivity. If you have that maneuverability, maybe you have a little bit, maybe you have more than that, looking to engage that as a Christian, when it has a Christian view of rest, I think is a helpful way forward. You don't necessarily need 3 months to be able to get some of that perspective that you're looking for and wish you had. There are complications, there are serious obstacles, and I don't want to underestimate those in anyone's life. But I also just want to encourage with what maneuverability you do have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe that's a shorter time frame. Like you have a vacation, a week off vacation. Like I think if it's a week off of vacation in the summertime, find a way to cultivate and invest in spiritual rest in that week, but also in the rhythms of your everyday week, of your everyday life throughout your week. I think it's really important to cultivate that countercultural rest. I like that.
It's an interesting thought experiment. If just around the table, we won't run this out, so we'd run out of time. But if we didn't get sabbaticals, we wouldn't just go, okay, no rest for us. Mm-hmm. We would look to find what we have and use it for the sake of what we're doing sabbaticals for now. We wouldn't just give up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a helpful kind of we do get this. It's amazing. We really appreciate it, and we don't take it for granted. But I also know that if we didn't have that maneuverability, we wouldn't just kind of say, well, that ship sailed. We'd together get creative about finding ways for each other in our unique circumstances to approach something like it in whatever ways we could.
Yeah. Well, I think that dovetails nicely into even just the focus of each particular sabbatical and how that shifts. I mean, this is all actually related to me, even some of the study emphases I have in hopes for this sabbatical ahead. But I'd like maybe start by just asking you guys, what are your prayers for? I'm about to leave on a sabbatical June 25th. It'll be my last Sunday here for 3 months. What are your prayers for my sabbatical? I mean, I could tell you what I'm thinking, but I'd love to hear what you guys think as we invite the church family into praying for and joining us in that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So thinking about 8 years ago, how old was Skylar?
Skylar was 3.
Okay, so
she just turned 3.
Yeah, I think about time with your family, right? This is a really unique season. Actually, Nicole and I have been thinking about this in terms of we kind of broke it down into 13-year segments. Owen's 13 years from now, Bailey will be 18. It's we had the first 13 years with kids, the second 13 years with kids, and then they're out of the house, right? Yeah. Or they're at least adults. Who knows if they're out of the house?
That's an optimistic.
But yeah, there's something you've never had a sabbatical in this season of life with your family.
Yeah.
And so having time, I know just even your discipleship and investment, which I know is a huge priority with especially your older kids, in really unique seasons of life, heading towards even more unique seasons of life. Mm-hmm. I just hope one of my prayers, it's not my only prayer, but one of my prayers for you is that this is a 3 months of family connection and discipleship and enjoyment that you will look back on and be so grateful for years and years from now. So that's one of my prayers for you.
That's a good one. I think for anyone, there's a certain kind of combination of your physical age and your spiritual maturity that gets you to a place where all of the big kind of external issues that you have are kind of quote unquote taken care of. Like there are certain things that tend to be more closer to the surface in terms of your life and your heart that over time in a relationship with God and with the church community get dealt with so that they are, if not erased, that they're smaller, they're not as prevalent in your life. And I think that's part of just the stages of Christian development. That's That makes sense, right? Like the things that are the most obvious are the things that are dealt with first, typically in anything, let alone, the life of growth as a Christian. And I think that that's a stage that I feel like, Scott, you and I, in certain ways, share in. Like we're kind of moving towards a different kind of part of life and part of the Christian life together. And that's okay. It's not all flat, right? There's different seasons of development in the Christian life. First John talks about, infants and young men and fathers and things like that. That's okay. And so kind of I think what happens there is you can either, in that stage, choose to go, cool, that means I'm basically on autopilot like from here on out. Like, I kind of like the big stuff's dealt with. I guess I just kind of like run it back and grow a little bit in these areas as I go. Or you can do what I've seen you do, which is, okay, so maybe God's knocking on the door of some of the deeper things that are less easy to understand and see and less clear and visible, and it feels like we're in weird shades of gray sometimes, and not these nice black and whites that we're used to. But they're just, ways of dealing with the depths of our heart that you can choose to avoid because all the visible things are kind of doing really well, or you can choose to really engage. And so my prayer for you, and in some ways it's echoed with a prayer for a lot of people in our church who I think are in that stage, is to have God meet you there and take you deeper. That's kind of this is the like corollary to Matt's, which Matt's has kind of got like the family dynamic, and I'm kind of going deep inner life personal. But I think you see how those two go together too, right? Like that's also a unique season that you don't always get back. Yeah. And so that's one of my prayers for you.
Man, I appreciate that. And I think as I think about it, I think those are, in a lot of ways, I think at the core of what I'm asking for prayer for. And I think as I think about the other side of that, when I'm saying like what do I hope the Lord will do, even just church-wise, ministry-wise, in my heart, I think that there's a couple of things that come to my mind. One is, we've talked about this a lot, but I feel like I've spent the last 10 years kind of just collecting responsibilities, both inside and outside of the church. And I think the question of what does the Lord want me? Like, what's best? Right? What does the Lord want me to be spending time on in the coming season? I think when I'm able to sit still, I'm less clear about that than I think I am. than I generally function. And honestly, one of the blessings of a sabbatical is I feel like it's an incredible privilege to have the space to ask that question without having to leave your job. Like most people have to leave their job to ask those questions. And so the wisdom and the space to say like, and I feel like in so many ways, the Lord's calling me deeper into the life of the church here. But that's easy. It's easy to say, like what that actually, like what that looks like. I think there's just some discovery to be had. I think related to that is we've talked about like Sabbath and Sabbath rest and Sabbath I'm also really curious about how the principles of Sabbath, not just rest, but how the principles of Sabbath apply in the rhythms of our lives generally, in my life. We've talked about that's one of the things I want to spend some time studying on, not just because I'm in rest, but because I think it's actually one of the areas where I feel least principled. I think I know that rest is important, but what does Sabbath mean? Like, what is this kind of engaged Godward rest in regular rhythms in the midst of life look like that is far more robust than simply the ceasing of work activity? And I don't think we don't have that. I think that works in a number, but I do have a lot of questions about that, and eager to explore that. And I think beyond that, we've done this long enough to, in all of that, saying like, okay, those are the things that, like, those are my intentions going in. I think I'm most excited to be surprised by creating the time I think some of that I might get some answers to. I think some of that Lord, I might something else in store. I'm eager for that. I feel I get the sense that the Lord is preparing for a season ahead, and us, the church. I think that could be cliche, but if I'm completely honest, there's a part of that scares me, because life's not always, easy, but I'm excited about the role and piece that His perfect love in each time, in each season, in each moment provides, and that this is a part of that. I'm eager to explore.
Well, that's the kind of thing right there that, like, I think it shows people listening, like, that if you had a pastor who could take 3 months and do those things and chose not to, like, do you want to be like, do you want to be part of that church? Like, like at some point, like, I mean, someone who was like,
no, I've got to be in the office.
Yeah, I don't really want to go deeper in my heart. Yeah. I don't know. Like, just hearing that, I'm like, yeah, like, of course, that's the kind of person I want to be pastored by and led by. And that's kind of how we do it with each other. But I'm looking at you going like, yeah, I really want you to go do this now. Just hearing you say it even more, I'm like, yeah, I really want that kind of for me, like there's a way that it is tied to what we do in a unique way. And I think this kind of sabbatical is not just like this cool privilege we get to enjoy, but it is also simultaneously something that people who are part of the church, I think, are hearing what you just said and go like, yeah, I really want him to do that. Like, I want to be pastored by that kind of person.
Yeah. And that to me is even the reason why we do this. The reason why we wanted to communicate about this isn't to, like, just explain something, but I really, really would covet your prayers. And I would actually ask you for a commitment to pray for me and for my family. I think oftentimes we do that in crisis. Like, we ask everybody to pray. We ask for people, and that's appropriate. I think in this, there's not a crisis, but it would, I'm eager for what the Lord has in store. And I would love to invite you and ask you to pray for me and my family during these 3 months, that the Lord would both meet us with all that we need, and for the sake of, for our sake, for my own sake, for the sake of my family, for the sake of our church, but ultimately, I think, just for the sake of His glory, like, for the sake of what He is doing and will continue to do in our midst. As we continue to pray for you in all the different seasons and moments and opportunities that we all face. So, anything else I'm
excited. I'm excited to see what God will do.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you to the church for their generosity in this. Thank you to the two of you for your generosity, because I also know that, being a man down around here for 3 months is not cost free. I know that the two of you bear that.
We have a list of responsibilities to take care of that may or may not get done. I'm not sure.
So I appreciate the way you guys make this possible too. I mean, it wouldn't be otherwise.
70% chance.
Fair enough. Well, thank you all. Thanks for praying. Thanks for being a part of this journey with us. We love you, and we'll see you. Well, you guys will see you. No.
I'll see you in 3 months.
That's right. No. We'll see you on
Sunday in October.
We'll see you on Sunday.